being fit and healthy at the same time.
I'll just add to that, Jeanette, that I believe about 2/3 of journeys are under 8 kilometres.
Right.
So if you've got a decent cycle...
The decent cycle will do 8 kilometres quite easily as well. And that's not true of the journey we did today. We drove from Thames, and I wouldn't want to have to bike that, so I'm glad I've still got my car. But when you do have to have a car, that little one down the bottom left corner is my Honda Jazz. The average fuel consumption of the whole New Zealand fleet at the moment is about 10.5 litres per 100 kilometres. My car does 100 kilometres on 5 litres, and actually when Harry drives it and just cruising along at 90, it does it on about 4.8. But I tend to cruise at 100 because I have to get to airports and things. But even with that, it only uses 5 litres. Now that means that, and it's not a fancy car, it's not a hybrid, it's not a Prius, it's not anything special at all. It's just a very efficient 1300, which costs slightly less than half what a Prius costs. So you don't have to be rich to be fuel efficient. Hybrids are good if you want to go that way, but there are other ways as well. Now that means if everybody in New Zealand, next time they change their car, because cars don't live forever, next time they change it, they buy the most fuel efficient vehicle that is fit for the purpose they need. We could double the fuel efficiency of our fleet. That's huge. And hardly anyone talks about the opportunities. And I think the easy way to do that is to set some standards for the vehicles coming into the country. For a given size and power, like supposing you want a 2-litre car and supposing you want it to have a certain amount of inside space, there's a 30% difference in the fuel efficiency of cars that will give you those things. So it's not like even that you've got to go small to be more efficient. There's a range of models in each size class, and why are we still bringing in the bad ones? So fuel efficiency is an average standard for the fleet, where the importers have got to balance the big cars they sell with some efficient cars as well, and bring the average down is obviously a sensible way to go, and it doesn't cost, you know. So, but going up above that, just reducing the number of trips you do. How many people go to town to get a litre of milk and come home and realise they need a loaf of bread as well and go back again? So just, you know, using the head can help. Public transport is obviously a key one. Now, there are lots of small communities like Whakatane that probably don't have any public transport and are not likely to in the short term. But most of the New Zealand population lives in towns that are big enough to sustain public transport services, and we should have them. I mean, it is outrageous that if Auckland wants a new motorway to go from one side of Auckland to the other, the government pays 100% of the whole damn thing. If Auckland wants to electrify its rail system also to go from one side of Auckland to the other, Auckland has to pay. Now, how stupid is that? And of course, any council that tries to and puts rates up to fund it, they're chucked out at the next election. And so they build motorways, they don't have trains. And yet, electrifying the Auckland rail, that's not a new rail, it's just the rail that exists now, and connecting up some of the bits of it would carry as many people as a brand new motorway, 8 lanes wide, going right across Auckland. Now, where are you going to find the land to build that? So it really is a no-brainer. There's obviously a lot of things we can do as individuals to live a bit closer to work so that we're in walking and cycling distance. But in a rural area, like where I live and where many of you live, we're not going to get a public transport option, and the obvious option if you can't cycle is carpooling. And internet-based carpooling is something that offers huge possibilities. We just need to get some organisation behind it. And workplace organised carpooling, because a lot of people prefer to travel with people they know rather than people they don't know. Then, going back to the car, talking about freight, and that's not actually up there, if you send a cargo of heavy freight by rail instead of by truck, it uses only a fifth of the diesel to go by rail that it uses to go by truck. Now the railway doesn't go everywhere, but if we strengthen the national rail network, upgrade the tracks which have been allowed to run down badly when it was privatised, and work's starting to happen now, we use the trucks as feeders with a sort of technology where it's easy and quick to transfer from one to the other, and use the rail for the long haul. We can save a lot of fuel that way. In terms of fuels, biofuels have had a really bad press because the Americans are, as the Americans sometimes do, doing totally crazy things like turning corn into ethanol to run motor vehicles, and that is absolutely wrong. And turning any kind of food into fuel to run motor cars is absolutely wrong while people are starving, because we are in a market economy. And in a market economy, if the stomachs of the very poor have got to compete in the market with the engines of the rich, then the stomachs of the poor haven't got a show. So we have to rule that out. But you can make biofuels from waste products which can't feed anybody. Tallow, for example, from the meat works, waste wood from forestry, algae that grow on sewage ponds. There are some options for growing biofuels in the future, and the Greens have insisted that the biofuel bill, which is in front of Parliament at the moment, which mandates a target for biofuels, a very low one, over the next 5 years, has got a clause in it saying that biofuels are not going to be allowed to be sold in New Zealand if they are made from food or grown on land of high value for food production, or if they are grown on land of high conservation value, so that we cut out the palm oil coming from Southeast Asia where they've clear-felled the tropical forests to plant palm oil plantations, and also that it's got to have a high net carbon reduction. So anything that meets that clause in the biofuels bill that we've written will be sustainable, and you can have confidence in it. We hope that that bill will go through before the election. We're not sure.
So Jeanette, can I just ask, Brazilian cane sugar, does that count as food?
Well, personally I've never really seen sugar as food. The ethanol from sugar industry in Brazil has been going for 40 years, and it's one of those marginal cases that you can argue about. It's not grown on, you can't grow sugar cane on the land that they're clearing in the Amazon, so it's not contributing to destroying Amazon forests, and it has a very high net carbon reduction over its life cycle. So it's certainly one of the better ones, but my aim would be that New Zealand produces its biofuel in New Zealand from waste products and from wood, and then we know where it's coming from. The bill probably will not initially exclude ethanol from Brazilian sugar, but that's probably the one important thing that will be allowed for a while. Electric vehicles are coming, but hey, they're not going to save us. Every time I tackle the government and Parliament for spending $2 billion, that's a B not an M, $2 billion on 4.5 kilometres of new motorway in a tunnel under the Prime Minister's electorate to Waterview, when the same amount would connect up the two bits of the rail system and increase